Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. It's your boy D Black coming back with another SmackDown review. Alright, SmackDown. Mm-mm-mm. It was sad. It wasn't a good show at all. I mean, from the beginning to the end. And I just can't understand. Again, Sami Zayn has dwindled his way in to getting the championship and getting into WrestleMania. I mean, he has been complaining, about all the things that have been going wrong with him and, whose fault it could have been and stuff like that. And now Triple H does the most craziest thing that I think that was possible crazy. But we'll talk about that later in the segment. Okay, we get Randy Orton coming out. He's been saying that, for 2 weeks, 2 weeks ago, Cody told him that he wants him to be the best, version of himself that he can be as far as, when that match that they'll be having at WrestleMania. And at that time, that's when Randy went off on Cody and just beat the tar out of him and stuff, you know. And then he told him, because he's blaming Cody for the actions that because Cody told him to be the Viper, you know, and for him told him to listen to the voices in his head, and then Randy's like, it's been a long time since he's listened to those voices that are in his head, you know, um, he hasn't really been thinking about that, but the thing that he's been thinking about is that, getting number 15 as far as, 15 titles. He's talking about, as far as his legacy, where he wants to leave his legacy and stuff like that. And that, getting, his 15th world championship, will cement his legacy as far as, being a wrestler in the business for over 20 years. And then he says that, about the voices in his head, back in his head. So, he can't, hold himself, or nobody should hold him responsible for anything that could happen or that will happen, while them voices are going off. Because we all know when Randy gets into it, he's in it. Then, he says he's not, blaming the voices in his head. He's blaming the people, the voices, that they are the problem and stuff. Man. And then he says that, there's only one person, that he's been talking to, that he's been listening to outside of his head, and that person must be telling him something. He didn't name the person or anything like that. But as he's saying that, then Matt Cardona comes out. And then, hey, he's telling Matt Cardona, like, hey, look, you know, um, if you can't handle it and stuff like that, and they're arguing back and forth and stuff, and he say, hey, if you got the mic and you got something to say, say it. That he had the mic in his hand, so he was telling Matt Cardona to say whatever he's going to say, and then Matt Cardona clocks Randy Orton with the mic and stuff, and so they come out and try to break and break that all up and everything, and then we get Nick Aldis backstage, and he's talking to Trick Williams, and he's telling Trick Williams, how good Trick Williams has been doing and stuff, and that he earned a spot, in WrestleMania. And then out comes Sami Zayn, squawking and everything and stuff, trying to, and he's asking Nick, all this, does he have a spot? And Nick always told him, like, look, through all the things, Sammy's been through, and Sammy hasn't been showing a good review or anything like that. He said that there's no spot available, for him to be in WrestleMania. And then, Trick Williams is like, thanking Nick Aldis and everything, call him Nicholas and everything. And, Sammy kind of gets a little deterred, and he comes up and says something to Trick, and then Trick tells him that, catering catering is in the opposite direction where he was walking to. And then Sami Zayn, clocks Trick Williams. And then we get Randy coming back, complaining about what Matt Cardona did to him, and he's asking Nick Aldis for a match, because he wanted to get even with Matt Cardona and everything. So the match was granted, so they'll be wrestling later on, in the card. Then we have the Bella twins going against Alexa Bliss and Charlotte Flair. This match was, I'm telling you, man, this match, it sucked. There was so many missed spots in this match. It's just the match was just ugly. I can't say anymore. I mean, if you've seen the match, you'll understand why. This match, there was so many missed spots, and then everything was so telegraphic and stuff. So this match really blew chunks. You know, um, had Lash Legend and Nia Jax. They came out and stuff. Sitting at the announcers table and everything, and they were viewing the match and stuff. And then all of a sudden, Lash gets up and the Bellas they get in their face and stuff, and then Lash clocks. I think it was Nikki Bella. Yeah, no, she clocks Brie Bella and everything, and then they get into it a little bit, and then all of a sudden, Alexa Bliss, is up against the ropes. She gets clocked by Lash Legend, and Nikki Bella, pins her 1, 2, 3, and then they have their little scroll, and then they all get into a brawl and stuff, and then here comes Lyra and Bailey. They come out and they start brawling with Nia Jackson, Lash Legend, and they go to the back, and then the Bella twins and Alexa Bliss and Charlotte Flair, they get into it with each other and stuff and looking crazy at each other and stuff. And then we get the little backstage segment with R Truth and Damian Priest and stuff. And R Truth is actually back there telling Damian Priest, that he's going to build a clubhouse and that the Judgment Day are going to be getting back together. And then Jelly Roll comes out, and then R Truth calls him Dirty Dom. And then Rhea comes out and he said, oh man, he told Rhea, that him and Dom are back together and stuff, and how Liv was gonna feel about it and stuff like that. But it was actually Jelly Roll and Rhea Ripley, and our Truth with his old comedic self and stuff. But Jelly Roll eventually tells Rhea Ripley to go and handle her business, with Jade, and basically Damian Priest tells her to go same thing, go handle her business with Jade, and that they have confidence in her that she'll beat Jade at WrestleMania. And then you get the Bella twins with Charlotte Flair and Alexa Bliss. They're talking about arguing about what happened in the match and stuff. So I'm thinking this match eventually after next week when Lyra Valkyrie and Bailey go up against Lash Legend and Nia Jax. I think this whole thing is going to get to WrestleMania. It's going to be, a four-way battle for those women tag team titles. I believe that's how it's going to happen. And then we got Rhea Ripley coming out saying that she didn't expect anything, any integrity from Jade Cargill, last week when she came out and Meechin and B-Fab came and helped and destroyed her last week and stuff. So she's, saying that, she wanted to fight dirty, that, she can fight dirty too, and then she said that she expected a little bit better than B-Fab and Meechin and everything because how, Jade did them and stuff like that. But eventually, I mean, a few weeks ago, you see Jade back there talking to B-Fab, so something was going on, so they got together, and basically that's what Jay said, that they came to their senses, they came to where everything is happening, where the best is and stuff like that, you know, um, and so Jade, I mean not Jade, but Rhea calls them out. She calls Meechin, B-Fab, and Jade out. So they come out to the ring, they say their little words and stuff like that, and they get in the ring and they come out with a match, as far as Rhea Ripley and B-Fab, so it'll be Rhea Ripley versus B-Fab. So that match gets started. It only lasted maybe a minute before Jade clocks Rhea, and then they get the beating up on Rhea, and then Jade Jades her and stuff, and stands over Rhea with the belt, talking crap to her and stuff like that. So that match is going to be a little bit interesting, to see, but it meant nothing. It did nothing, So then we get Miz, and Kit Wilson backstage and everything, and Miz is telling Kit to go out to the match, and do his thing on himself and stuff like that. That he has to stop believing in himself. That he go out and have matches and stuff because Miz is still worried about what Danhausen put on him as far as that curse spell on him and stuff. And then the Miz leaves, and then Danhausen comes and he asks Kit Wilson, what does he have that he doesn't have? Danhausen kept, was saying that, he looks, he dresses well, he looks good and stuff like that. And then Kit Williams tells him, like, well, you're not pretty like me, or anything like that, and then Danhausen ends up throwing this curse on Kit Wilson and stuff. And then we get Drew, you know, um, saying that Jacob Fatu, he's blaming him for taking everything, taking his spot, for WrestleMania, taking his opportunity for being champion at WrestleMania and stuff like that with the match that he had with Cody. And Jacob Fatu came out and, you know, interfered in the match actually and stuff, and it cost Drew the title and stuff, which got back to Cody and stuff. So, Drew's pissed and everything. So, and then we get the match with Jelly Roll and Kit Wilson. And Kit Wilson, basically says that, he had another poem or something to say, to, I guess, back up from what Jelly Roll said about his mom and everything. So Kit Wilson said whatever his little poem or whatever the case may be. Um, then the match gets, started and everything. I mean, it was okay and stuff, but Kit Wilson is nothing but a full-blown, full-fledged jobber because they let Jelly Roll beat him. And I don't understand it. I just don't understand how they let Jelly Roll win this match. But it was his debut, television match, so I guess that's how Triple H saw it. It's just crazy. It made no sense. It has nothing to do with anything. Another match could have been put in that place, to give us something for, WrestleMania that's coming up, and then Solo Sikoa is, back talking to the MFTs and stuff, telling them that, say everything, everything that he does, is for them, it's for the family, and it's everything that he does is out of love, saying that he can't lead them, if they're not on the same page and stuff. So he needs, saying, then he apologizes. And then while he apologizes, he said, you know what, who wouldn't apologize to you? He said Roman Reigns and stuff. So I don't know where that's going. Roman's going to be busy himself as far as, with his hand with CM Punk at WrestleMania. So I don't know where Solo Sikoa was going with that. We'll see. Stay tuned. Then Carmelo Hayes is telling Tamatonga, hey, if he's going to, take a shot at the U.S. title, come out to the open challenge and everything because, time is running out, unless, Solo Sikoa, has to be the one to tell him what to do or what not to do and stuff. And then he leaves to go to the ring, and then Shinsuke Nakamura comes out, and he asks Tama Tonga, is he going to go out for the title? And then Tala Tonga comes and asks if there's any problems. Tama Tonga says no, and then they walk off. Then we get the match with Carmelo Hayes and the mystery partner. Who would you thought? Sami Zayn. And as this match goes on, Trick Williams comes out, and Trick Williams comes out and he sits, at the announcer's table and stuff. And so the match, goes on and stuff, And I thought, it was a pretty decent match. I know Sami Zayn can, wrestle. I know Carmelo Hayes, he does his thing too. The match was, a pretty good match. And then as things were going, we knew Trick Williams had to get involved, so he did. He got up on the side of the ring. Um, Carmelo was about to ready to go roll up Sami Zayn, and then Trick Williams nails him and stuff, and then Sami Zayn, rolls him up and everything, and wins the match. And then we get Jacob Fatu and Kathy Kelly. Jacob saying that he has something that he wanted to say to the people, and he didn't want to tell her. He wanted to say it to the people, live and stuff. And then while that's going on, as Jake was going out to the ring, Nick Aldis and Sami Zayn, Sammy's coming up, telling Nick that he finally did what he did and stuff. Now that he's champion, is there a spot at WrestleMania for him? And Nick Aldis tells him yes, he does. He's champion, so he'll defend, the U.S. title match, and it will be against Trick Williams. Then we got Jacob Fatu out in the ring, saying that, he's hurt and he's injured, from everything that happened with him and Drew a couple of weeks ago, when Drew snatched him off the side of the building, they both crashed into some junk from off the building, saying if Drew thought that was going to keep him from, doing what he's doing, Drew was wrong and stuff, that he's not backing down. It's just making him, strong and everything, and that he wants Drew and he wants to get, his payback, you know. And then Drew comes out, saying that how hurt he is and everything, and saying that, Jacob Fatu is saying that he's the victim and stuff. And then Drew McIntyre is saying that, himself is the victim and stuff, And then Drew's always been saying that every time that he lost a match or did something that he wasn't, supposed to do or anything, he's always blaming somebody else and not taking the blame for himself, for the outcomes of everything that's ever happened to him and stuff. But we already know that the match is going to happen with Drew and Jacob Fatu because Nick Aldis comes out, and he tells him that, on April 18th, so, that's the first night of WrestleMania, that Drew and Jacob Fatu are going to have a match, but it's not going to be a match that's going to be sanctioned by WWE. It's an unsanctioned match, no rules, no countouts, just either pinfall or some submission and stuff. So anything goes. So they can be anywhere around the arena in Las Vegas. So they have that match set up, and then we have Jelly Roll, and Matt Cardona, and then Jelly Roll is telling Matt Cardona that he's sorry for telling Drew to go out there, to apologize to him because when I mean not Drew, but when he told Randy to go out there to apologize, to him, Randy went out there and Matt Cardona went out there and Matt and Randy RKO'd, Matt Cardona and he destroyed him. I mean he beat the living tar out of you know Matt Cardona last week. And then Jelly Roll tells Matt Cardona that Cody's on his way to the stadium, and Matt Cardona tells him like if he sees Cody, tell Cody not to come out to the ring and stuff and interfere into his match and stuff because he wanted to go out and take care of Randy Orton, on his own, by himself. And Zelina Vega comes, after that and tells him, tell Matt that he's fighting the fight that he can't win, you know, and stuff, and that he's trying to fight a fight that's bigger than his ego, and that he's gonna get beat up, and then Alistair Black had a little something to say. So, but anyway, then we get Chelsea Green and Tiffany Stratton, and Chelsea Green is trying to ask Tiffany, um, she wants to be kind of like what she is at with the her service and everything. She's trying to get Tiffany to come and join her. Asking Tiffany if she needs any help, from the service or anything like that. And Tiffany, tells her no. And Chelsea then says, "Hey, I've been a two-time champion, U.S. title champ holder and everything, twice." And then Tiffany said, "Yeah, that's twice that you lost the belts too. So why would I need you, to guide me or to help me and stuff?" Well, I mean, which she is right and stuff. So then we get the match with Giulia, and Tiffany Stratton, and it was a non-title match and stuff. And this match was another one. I mean, all the matches tonight were just not good at all. Um, this match went a little bit back and forth. There was some missed spots and everything and stuff like that. You know, um, at one time, Tiffany goes, for the prettiest moonsaw. Then Kiana James, climbs on the stairs, kind of interferes with her and stuff like that, take her off, her spot and everything. Then the referee clears her, Kiana James from the stairs. Tiffany goes up and she, does a swanton, but she the swanton that she did earlier was great, but then when she goes for the prettiest moonsault, this time she catches some knees, she gets rolled up, and she gets pinned, by Giulia and stuff. So I don't think this is gonna be over with. You know, um, Giulia has to put that title on the line, and I believe she does have a match coming up. In SummerSlam. I'm not SummerSlam. I'm sorry, at WrestleMania. So, which should be good. I mean, I'm thinking that once she puts that title up, she'll lose that title. So I'm hoping that she does. So she'll be going up against, it doesn't say, but I'm sure she's going to be putting that title, and it'll probably be Tiffany Stratton that will go to the title, and Tiffany Stratton will probably be the new U.S. title holder. Then we get Lyra Valkyria and then Bailey, saying that they are, the threat, against the women's tag team title holders of Nia Jackson, Lash Legend, and stuff like that, and that they will do anything and what it takes, to get them titles. Then we got Randy Orton. He's on the phone talking to somebody, you know, um, saying that he will see them soon. So I wonder who he's talking to. Who could it be? And then we have the match with Randy Orton and Matt Cardona. Um, the match, I mean, was okay. Matt Cardona held his own and stuff. It was a little bit, it was, pretty good back and forth. I think this was probably one of the better matches of the night and stuff. And then, eventually Randy Orton hits Matt Cardona with the RKO, and it's over. So Randy wins that match, and then here comes Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes starts coming out. I mean, it was a long walk to the arena, but he came out and stuff. And then once they met and locked horns, it was on. They brawled and brawled and brawled. Security got beat up and everything. I mean, it was just crazy, crazy, crazy. Nick Aldis, is trying to hold Cody back and stuff, and it didn't happen. So it just brawled and brawled and brawled. And then Jelly Roll comes out to be the voice of reason. He's talking to he's he's talking to Randy Orton and stuff, and then he goes around and he starts going back to talk to Cody Rhodes. And as he's talking to Cody Rhodes, Randy Orton kind of breaks free, and then he RKO's Jelly Roll and leaves Jelly Roll laying and stuff. I mean, so next week something's got to be said. Jelly Roll's going to say something. I know he is about being RKO'd, by Randy Orton because of how he's been saying that Randy Orton's not himself or anything like that. So, but anyway, But now I got a little something, about Bianca Belair. And Bianca Belair, I believe she may end up having an appearance at WrestleMania. You know, there was a little flyer out saying that she's training now to get back into the ring. Her fingers healing well, and I believe she's about to come and do some craziness. And I will be putting a video out on my prediction videos, um, just to say how WrestleMania is gonna go, because I think right now, ooh, it's gonna be a sad, sad WrestleMania. I mean, because the matches that they have lined up, they're just throwing everything together. But anyway, please don't forget to subscribe, like, share, leave a comment. Let me know how you feel. If you agree or disagree on how you feel, just let me know. All right. Thank you for watching. God bless. Deuces. And I'll see you on the next video. Thank you. Thank you.